Hello, church family. Welcome to today's Sunday school lesson. We are in session 2 entitled Amazing Grace. And our key idea this week is God used Rahab, an imperfect person, to accomplish his plans. We're going to be in Joshua chapter 2, verses 4 through 21. We're going to start off by asking the question, why does God so often use unlikely, imperfect people to accomplish his purposes? I think a really good answer to this question is if God only used those who were great, those who were perfect, those who were strong on their own, then it could be argued that these people accomplished everything that they did through the means that they had, their strength, their intelligence, their cunning, their understanding, their wisdom, all of those good traits that are God given, but can be relied on and possibly even become a basis of arrogance or pride in a person, but God uses flawed, unlikely people to do his will to prove that he is in control, that to prove that he is the one who empowers us to do things. For example, Abraham and Sarah both laughed at God when he told them that they were going to have children. They were going to have a son and that they were going to have as many children as there are stars in the sky because they were old. And they said, there's no way this is going to happen. God made David the greatest king of Israel and established an eternal covenant with him, even though David came from humble beginnings, and even though David was a flawed person. David was not perfect. David was a sinner, just like you and me. David committed egregious, terrible sins, and he suffered consequences for those sins. The loss of uh, his newborn son by Bathsheba, the loss of um, both Amnon and keep wanting to say Mephibosheth, and I know that's wrong. Absalom. So he lost three sons as a result of his sin and his betrayal of Uriah, his disobedience to God, his sin toward and against Bathsheba. And so we see that God does use unlikely, imperfect, oftentimes people from adversity. People, adversity is the wrong word. People who live lives that are oppositional to the Lord, He turns their life around and saves them in unlikely ways. Unlikely ways. So we're going to see that about Rahab, who is a Canaanite prostitute living in Jericho, who hides and shelters two of the Israelite spies who go in. Who we're going to see that Joshua sent them into Canaan, into Jericho, to figure out its weakness because God said, "Go and take Jericho." And so now they are going to take Jericho, and Rahab um, strikes a deal with Israel and says, I know that God has given you this land, and we're going to get to all this. But anyway, she was faithful, even though she had lived a life of sin, a life of debauchery is a good word. Uh, she came out of that and became a part of the nation of Israel. So let's begin just talking about a little bit of the context here. So this is the battle we're going to see eventually in the coming weeks, and what we're going to see today is all due to God giving a command back in the book of Deuteronomy, where He told the nation of Israel, "Listen, today you are about to cross the Jordan River." To enter and drive out nations greater and stronger than you, with large cities fortified to the heavens. Jericho was one of these large and fortified cities. You could another idiom we could use. So it says fortified to the heavens. You could say armed to the teeth. These are impenetrable walls. These are large walls of stone, probably bronze as well, reinforced with metals of some kind. We're in the Bronze Age at this time. Um, so Joshua sent two spies, like I said, to scout the area and bring him a report on what his troops should expect when they go up to the city. And so archaeologists believe that Jericho is one of the oldest cities in the world. It's located in the well-watered lower Jordan Valley. its location was important because several routes that led west into the central hill country of Canaan emanated from this city. So a lot of trade routes went through Jericho, and so it was a hub of commerce. It was well fortified. It was a good place to have your garrison, your stronghold stationed here, at least some of them. And so it was probably a terrifying sight, intimidating sight to see. And we're going to see that the Israelites get to in the coming weeks. We all know the story. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho. Jericho. We know that song, and we're going to see Joshua bringing down the city of Jericho in the coming weeks. But let's begin. We have a lot to read today and a lot of questions to answer. So let's begin reading there in verse 4. But the woman who had taken the two men, so let's put names to these people. This is Rahab taking the two men, the two spies that Joshua had sent, and hidden them. So she said, "Yes, the men did come to me, but I did not know where they were from." So she was speaking to officials in the city at this point. At nightfall, when the city gate was about to close, the men went out, and I don't know where they were going. Chase after them quickly, and you can catch up with them. But she had taken the men, the spies, up to the roof and hidden them amongst the stalks of flax that she had arranged on the roof. The men pursued along the roads to the fords of the Jordan, and as soon as they left to pursue them, the city gate was shut. Before the men fell asleep, she went up on the roof and said to them, "I know that the Lord has given you this land, and that terror of you has fallen on us, and everyone who lives in the land is panicking because of you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og, the two Amorite kings you completely destroyed across the Jordan. When we heard this, we lost heart, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is in heaven. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on earth below. Now please swear to me by the Lord that you will also show kindness to my father's family, because I have showed kindness to you. Give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father, mother, brothers, sisters, and all who belong to them, and save us from death." The men answered her, "We will give our lives for yours. If you don't report our mission, we will show kindness and faithfulness to you when the Lord gives us the land." Notice that conditional. This is a conditional promise. If you don't give us away, if you don't tell what we're about to do and give away our plans, you will be a part of Israel. We promise this to you. Then she let them down by a rope through the window, since she lived in a house that was built into the wall of the city. So her house was built into the outer wall of the city. So they had easy access down out of her window and down into the outer parts of either the wall or actually outside of the city. "Go to the hill country so that the men pursuing you won't find you," she said. "Hide there for 3 days until they return. Afterward, go on your way." The men said to her, "We will be free from this oath you made us swear, unless when we enter the land you tie the scarlet cord to the window through which you let us down. Bring your father, mother, brothers, and all your father's family into your house. If anyone goes out the doors of your house, his death will be his own fault, and we will be innocent. But if anyone with you in the house should be harmed, his death will be our fault. And if you report our mission, we are free from the oath you made us swear. Let it be as you say," she replied, and she sent them away. After they had gone, she tied the scarlet cord to the window. So they say, "Hey, if you betray us in any way, if you don't mark your window, we're not responsible for what happens, because we were told to come and take this city." And that means doing what we got to do, the dirty business of warfare, which is at its core, there's death involved. There's killing and death involved in the dirty art of war. Dirty meaning it is dirty. It's not glamorous at all. But anyway, they tell her, tie a scarlet cord to your window so we know which house not to harm, and also bring all of your family in, and don't let them go out into the streets, because if they die as a part of this of us taking the city, well, it's because they were outside of your house, but your house will not be harmed. And so that's we're going to see that in a few weeks, how that happens and how that goes. So first we see a bold act. Let's just go ahead and dive in. This is we have 4 sections to go over today. But first we have a bold act, and this is Joshua 2, 4 through 7. So let's read this and dive in a little bit deeper. But the woman, Rahab, like we said, had taken the 2 men, these spies, and hidden them. So she said to the two city officials, to the soldiers who were looking for these 2 spies, she speaks to them. Yes, those men did come to me, but I didn't know where they were from. At nightfall, when the city gate was about to close, they went out, and I don't know where they were going, but chase after them quickly. Rahab deceived the king and sent his soldiers on a wild goose chase to protect the Israelites. And but she says, chase after them quickly, and you can catch up with them. But she had taken them up to the roof and hidden them amongst stalks of flax. So this was a plant that was used to make clothing. It's you can kind of think of it maybe like stalks of wheat. But anyway, when you cut it down, you would lay it out flat on the roof, and it would dry in the heat of the sun. But this flax was used to make clothing and thread and things like that. The men pursued them along the roads to the fords of the Jordan, and as soon as they left to pursue them, the city gate was shut. So the city gate shut and locked behind these soldiers, pursuers of these spies. And so we see this bold act of lying to officials, lying to an authority. And we see this and we kind of can scratch our heads and go, well, God tells us to obey authority. God tells us to, um, to submit to authorities and to not lie. That's one of the 10 Commandments. Well, I think here, number one, Rahab is not a member of Israel. She would not have known the 10 Commandments. But these spies were on a mission from God. Um, this is something that was commanded of Israel to go and take the city. Joshua's being a good general and conducting his intelligence operations, trying to gather intelligence on the city. And I'm not saying it's not sinful. I'm not saying it's right. What I'm saying is um, that in warfare, sometimes there's a need for deception, a need for espionage, for spies. And so, in order to protect herself and to be faithful to Israel and eventually become a part of the nation of Israel, she, out of fear of the Lord, because she says that here later, um, because of fear of the Lord, she takes the men in and protects them. She's like, I know that the Lord has given you this land. So, what's the relationship between boldness and faith? Well, she clearly had faith in the Lord based on the just word of mouth, and that caused her to act boldly. And that's the way our faith should cause us. And sometimes that looks like possibly civil disobedience when the government calls us to do something that is um, against God's laws or against God's will, then we are righteous in a civil disobedience, um, murdering, not anything that also breaks the 10 Commandments, but just like Daniel was civilly disobedient to Nebuchadnezzar whenever the statue was put up, and Daniel, well, that was Darius with that particular, um, but um, where Daniel got caught praying to God instead of praying to Darius. But anyway, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did not fall down and worship the golden idol, the golden statue that was made in Babylon, and they they did not submit to authority because that authority was trying to put itself above God. And that's the same for us. And anytime an authority, an earthly authority, tries to put itself above God, that's when we should disobey it, because obeying it would be a form of idolatry, which that in itself breaks the 10 Commandments, break, and therefore is sinful. So, we could get off into the weeds of legality here, but regardless, Rahab had faith, and that faith caused her to act boldly. And our faith should also call us to act boldly. All week at VBS this last week, we were looking at two families who left their homes in southern United States. One from Texas, one from Arkansas. The family from Arkansas went to Kenya and lived in Nairobi, but they also traveled to all of these villages, African villages in Kenya, and preached the gospel. Went out and shared the gospel and preached the good news of Jesus to all of these very rural, very unreached people in Kenya. And then the family from Texas, who actually I have the pleasure of knowing personally, the Martin family were classmates of mine and Grace's at ETBU. Tyler and Ashley were there at the same time as we were. And anyway, they left their home in Texas to start churches in Arnun, Wyoming, which is a small town in the middle of nowhere in Wyoming. And they actually did something called the Riders Circuit, where they would actually do mobile churches around these vast rural towns where there's like maybe 60 miles or even further in between these little bitty towns of like 200 people. And they're traveling all over Wyoming sharing the gospel, and people are being saved, and they're planting churches in these little towns. They would go into a town, they'd ask them, where do you go to church? And the overwhelming majority of people said, nowhere. There's no churches here. We don't go to church anywhere. And that kind of boldness can only be inspired by a devoted faith and complete and total devotion to the Lord, and that faith, that sold out kind of faith. We use that sold out um, kind of that language, that phrase, where it's the only thing that we do. We are completely sold out for the Lord, and that inspires the boldness to go and do life changing, earth shattering things. And so, out of this bold act, we see a kind action. We see Rahab take mercy on these guys who would have been dead to rights if she had given them up to the soldiers. You know, say go hide on the roof, and then sent the soldiers after them where they couldn't get away. They would have been dead. And instead, she was kind. So she, verse 8, before the men fell asleep, she went up on the roof and said to them, I know that the Lord has given you this land, and that the terror of you, of the nation of Israel, has fallen on the city of Jericho. Because um, terror has fallen on the city, and everyone who lives in Canaan, not just in Jericho, but also in Canaan, is panicking. This is an image of this word paints the image of melting. They are melting away. Jericho's residents were melting in fear of the Israelites and their God, and and that's true because of what God has done, and word has spread that the nation of Israel, they left Egypt 40 years ago. They left Egypt. They marched across the Red Sea, and the Lord allowed them to do that. Their God must be with them. And then they also took out two Amorite kings and completely destroyed them before they ever crossed the Jordan. So there in verse 9, the Lord, she mentions the Lord. She's a Gentile. She is a Gentile is just anyone who is not a member of the house of Israel or the nation of Israel. Anyone who's not a Jew, they're a Gentile. So Rahab's a Gentile, just like we are Gentiles. Most of us are Gentiles. But Rahab affirmed God's work. She was confident that he would lead Israel to possess the land. Um, she says there that he has given you this land. Verse 10, we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og, the two Amorite kings, you completely destroyed across the Jordan. When we heard this, we lost heart, and everyone's courage failed because of you. These two kings were great kings. They had never been defeated, but now they were. And so it's kind of like seeing a superpower defeated, and anyone who trusted in that superpower, man, I think this is probably true of a lot of nations when the Soviet Union fell. Probably true of a lot of Germany's allies in World War II when Germany and was beaten in World War II. Um, but they lost heart, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For your Lord your God is in heaven and above, and on earth below. Now please swear to me by the Lord that you will also show kindness to my father's family because I showed kindness to you. So she's asking for repayment for her kindness. Give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father, mother, brothers, sisters, and all who belong to them and save us from death. So she's asking for her kindness to be met with kindness, to not be betrayed. There in verse 10, they have heard, this is note G, Israel's enemies knew about the miracles. Word had spread. Um, and when these miracles and these victories spread, it just caused discord. It caused terror to begin to well up in the hearts of those in Canaan. So, um, so the question we have then is, how should our beliefs about God impact the way we treat others? Well, we see that Rahab, having faith in God, treated God's people with kindness, and her kindness paid. That's a very good thing for us to know, because as God's people, we should default to showing kindness. We shouldn't show signs of hostility. We shouldn't show signs of um, negativity when it comes to uh, the world. We should show signs of being hopeful, because we have a hope in our Savior. And people should question where that hope comes from so that we can give them an answer. Our hope comes from Jesus Christ and the redeeming work of our Lord through him. And so we should treat people well because God treats people well. God has a heart for them. So then we see a daring escape. This is verses 14 through 16. The men answered her, "We will give our lives for yours. If you don't report our mission, we will show kindness and faithfulness to you when the Lord gives us the land." When she let them down, then she let them down through the window. And she lived in a house that was built into the wall of the city. Go to the hill country. So the opposite direction of the king's soldiers. They went one way, she's telling them to go the other. Jordan's fords were east of Jericho, while the hills were around the city were to the west. So she sent them toward the Jordan River, which is actually more toward the armies of Israel, because they just came over the Jordan. And she sent that's where she sent the soldiers. Now she's sending the spies into the hill country west of the city so that they can hide easily out there and not be found before the soldiers return to Jericho. And so we see that there was obedience required on the part of Rahab and also on the part of the spies. And faith in God also requires uh, obedient action. Why? Because obedience is how we prove our faith. If we have faith in God, we will do what he says. We believe what he says, we will do what he says, essentially. It's just like um, I would not advise anyone to blindly trust just anybody you meet on the street and obey what they say. But I would advise those who are in places of authority to be obeyed, and that is a trustworthy thing. And it should be that there's an exception to the rule, and I am aware of that. But if you see a person of authority, somebody, a cop wearing their uniform, if you see a firefighter wearing their uniform and they are telling you get out of the burning building, you should probably obey and get out of the burning building. If you see a cop and they say, "Hey, stop doing this illegal thing," you should probably stop doing this illegal thing, such as speeding or whatever. Um, and just like that, but even on a greater scale, God has proven himself to be trustworthy. God has proven himself to be the authority of what? The authority of everything. And so, faith should only inspire obedience. Disobedience is an act of a lack of faith in God, because it's a more of a saying, God, I know better than you, and I'm going to do what I say is best rather than what you say is best, and I'm going to disobey. And then finally, we see a firm assurance, and this is Joshua chapter 2, 17 through 21. And so the men said to her, "We will be free from this oath. We will be free from this oath you made us swear, unless when we enter the land you tie the scarlet cord to the window through which you let us down. Bring your father, mother, brothers, and all your father's family into your house. If anyone goes out the doors of your house, his death shall be his own fault, and we will be innocent. But if anyone with you in the house should be harmed, his death will be our fault. And that implies that there will be a some kind of restitution for that. But verse 20, and if you report our mission, if you betray us, we are free. That is our non-compete clause in this in this contract. If you go and tell our plans, if you betray us and report our mission to the king, then this contract is null and void essentially. Just like a non-compete clause in a worker's contract, where you can't work for their we are free from the oath you made us swear. And then she says, let it be as you say, she replied, and she sent them away. So the terms that were set, or the terms that were laid before her, they were acceptable to her. And so the terms were set. She agreed upon them, and she sent them away. After they had gone, she tied the scarlet cord. This is kind of drawing a parallel here between this scarlet cord and the blood of the lamb during Passover in Egypt. There's a parallel there, that the scarlet cord would mark her door or her window, her house, so that her family would be safe, and they can't leave. Just like in Egypt, Israel, the nation of Israel, couldn't leave their houses during the night of Passover, otherwise they might be stricken by the angel of death. Well, same kind of thing here. That scarlet cord marks her house so that the Israelites know which house not to destroy and protect her family. So if you were Rahab, how would you feel about the spies' conditions? I think they're quite fair. Don't betray us and we're good. That's pretty cut and dry. I think those are very fair conditions. There's no like you have to tithe. There's no you have to do this, that, and the other. There's no you have to convert to Judaism. There's none of that that's listed here. It's just don't give us away. Don't betray us. And if you don't betray us, and if you don't go outside, and yada yada yada, then then we're good. And if anyone does get hurt and all of those conditions are met, that's our fault, and there will be repayment, restitution for that. So in light of that, what are some signs that remind us of God's grace in our lives? So we talking about that scarlet cord as a sign of God's grace, sign of God's protection over Rahab's house and family. What are some signs of grace that we have on our lives today? There won't be a physical cord. It's not going to be a sign in your kitchen. As for me and my house, we shall serve the Lord. Nothing like that. But there are times where, man, there are families I have seen go through it and go through it and go through it time and time again, and yet they never falter. They just roll with the punches because God has given them grace and God has shown them grace. Even in the midst of adversity, they are still able to, as I said, roll with the punches and able to take on what is coming toward them with faith and with grace because of God's grace. I think a constant symbol of God's grace is just the rising sun. Every day is a gift. Every day is an undeserved gift. For me, a sign of God's grace in my life is every time that little boy downstairs smiles at me. I mean, I just melt. And Tucker is an undeserved gift. Tucker, if you watch this in however many years, it's still true today. But children are an undeserved gift, a sign of God's grace in our lives. And I think that we often miss the beauty of creation because of how far creation has fallen due to sin. But God's beauty of creation, the signs of his grace on our lives are still all around us. It's why I love camping. It's why I love fishing. It's why I love being in nature, is because I can see all of those little signs that God is not just a celestial clock or watchmaker, is an active and involved creator in it. So that is our lesson today. Be faithful to the Lord, be faithful to your promises, and show kindness to everyone because of your faith in Christ. And so that is our lesson for today. Thank you so much for being with me today. I look forward to worshiping with you very soon. Bye-bye.